So we are here back with our Learn to RV podcast, but this is our community spotlight series. And today I have a very special guest that I met this past summer. Stan Cromlish of Wandering Gypsy RV Life is here with us today. And he's a little bit different because he's a solo traveler, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I travel by myself everywhere. So, yes, I am a solo traveler. Unlike you with all your kids and all of that, yes, it is. I travel as I joke. I travel with my three favorite people: me, myself, and I.
I love it. But you have kind of a very varied background and
So,
and the more I learn about you, the more it intrigues me to learn more about what you love to do. So, the last time we were together, you mentioned that you were headed to a rodeo. So, can you tell me a little bit about your background in that space?
So 35 years ago, and yes, Jen, I dug out a old buckle from a Shriners rodeo in 1997 where I won the bareback riding. So I rode bucking horses and I rode bulls. I wasn't very good, but I had fun and I met a lot of neat people that way. For me, rodeo was just like the RV life. It's everybody's traveling down the road trying to get either to the next campground or the next rodeo. And I actually fly out tomorrow. Yes, I'm getting on an airplane instead of in my RV to go to Vegas for the National Finals Rodeo.
Well, that's totally fun. We were there one year
Yeah.
for that. It's that's quite an adventure, in itself. So
It-
you also have a podcast, and so that's Wandering Gypsy RV Life. And how long have you been
right.
podcasting?
I started my first podcast released either April 26th or May 8th, somewhere in that time frame, right around the same time that I retired from my day job. I started the podcast. And I'm on episode 27 was released on Saturday. Episode 28 is coming out next Saturday. And my next episode's kind of funny. I like to write in I've given Bertie Bee a personality, I've given Rosie a personality, and Bertie Bee got sideswiped at Ocean Lakes and got her repaired. So I posted about that. And then my tow car, Chevrolet Equinox Rosie, got her feelings hurt. She said, "You are giving her star treatment. What about me?" So she got a post last night because she was mad at me. And, it was kind of fun to do something like that. And then so the podcast was actually a little bit of humor in that where I had to mediate the argument and I epically failed. So we had to call in management. You met my mother, management at Gear. So we had to call in management to referee. And she looked at both of them and said, "Which one of you is on my insurance?" And neither one of them said a word at that point, and they got right in line. So, I kind of like doing fun things like that. And so that's the upcoming podcast.
That's awesome. And when
And
I met your mom at Gear, it was kind of a unique situation because you had both your parents with you. Now, was that their first rally with you?
yes,
And how
that
did they
was their
like it?
first rally. They loved it, and they said, "We're some of the youngest people there." At 83 and 84, they felt like they were younger than a lot of folks there. They said, "Mom said, we get around awfully well. Look at some of these other folks."
You also have quite a few other hobbies that, have been interesting to hear about as we've been, meeting up at different events and stuff. You've written a couple books. Can you tell us a little bit about what you write about in those books?
So back in 2017, I decided to try my hand at being an author. I wrote a historical fiction novel called The Johnson Family Chronicles, which is available on Amazon. And it was about World War II. But then more recently, I have written three books about the RV life. Book one is How to Enjoy the RV Life Without Losing Your Cool. Book two is Keeping Your Rig Road Ready. And what I cover there are slides, leveling, roofs, weights, tires, all the systems in an RV. And the third book in that series is From Breakdowns to Belly Laugh. And basically, it's a collection of stories over the past 5 years. I've only been RVing 5 years, so I know you've been doing it 12, 13, but I've only been RVing five, and you still collect stories even in a short time.
Absolutely. But what's neat about that is the people we all meet on the road and how different each one of us meets people. I think that that's part of that amazing story. And we kind of weave our stories together, which is what makes this lifestyle so special as a whole. So you said you retired. What did you used to do in your previous life?
What I used to do, I was a software developer. I wrote applications for a large telecommunications company, and I did that for about 15 years. Before that, I was a network engineer. And before that, I owned my own dog supply business. I had a couple of Labrador
Oh, wow.
retrievers who were pretty good. One of them won the National Upland Classic Series national champion. The other one won the Quail Unlimited Flushing Dog of the Year, both hunting dog trials. So I was a dog trainer, you know, and mom and I were talking this morning, and she said, "You've had a life, quite frankly, Stan." She said she remembered a story from 1975. We were in Washington D.C. and I made friends with an FBI agent, and they took me on a tour of Washington D.C. underground at 5 or 6 years old. So that was pretty cool. But I've done a lot of things in my life, quite frankly, Jennifer.
Well, that's neat, and you got quite a few fun hobbies too, other than just going to rodeos. And Frank's actually looking forward to meeting up with you again to learn a little bit more
I
about one of those hobbies. You know which one, right?
like them. Yep, I like. Yes, yes, I do. And he
So
wants
my
to go
husband
fly
hates.
fishing with me. I
Yeah,
think is that right?
yeah, yep. And so my husband's, he's not the most patient guy in the world, so he doesn't always like he loves the idea of fishing, but then he gets there and he's like done. And so I think fly fishing would be a better fit for him because I think it's more active. And
Yeah,
so we're
because you're
gonna have to meet up
constantly doing.
somewhere. Yeah.
Well,
So
yep.
what got you
Well,
into fly fishing?
so
Like, is that I mean, it's an expensive hobby, but it's a fun hobby for sure.
it's expensive, and I can thank my dad's mom. I could not say grandma as a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, so I called her Bagaw. That is Bagaw, Bagaw. And I grew up fishing, I grew up hunting, and I told Bagaw that I wanted to learn how to fly fish. And she said, "I know just the person to teach you." So picture this: my grandmother, genteel Southern lady, driving around in her Cadillac sedan DeVille in the mountains of North Carolina while her grandson is down a hill. She is on a gravel road in that Cadillac. And her grandson is getting taught how to fly fish. And either I cannot remember the river we fished, but she put me in touch with Joe Hedrick, who owned Jesse Brown's Outdoor Center in Charlotte. He taught me how to cast, he taught me how to tie flies, and then he took me fishing. So I can thank my grandmother for getting me into fly fishing when I was about 11, 12, 13 years old. So 81, 82, 83. And then I gave it up for about 20 years or 25 years and picked it back up when I started RVing again. Because RVing and fly fishing go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Well, I can see why that would be the case. So, what's the favorite place you've been on the road? Do you have a favorite place? So for me, I don't actually have a favorite place. It's wherever my friends are, and since they're all over the country,
I
I can't pick just one. But a lot of people have that favorite spot that they love going to every year or every other year.
So I have about three favorite locations. I really like Alcova, Wyoming. It's a dam site. The city limit sign says winter population 400, summer population 35,000. It's a
Wow.
dam site because the North Platte River, there's a tailwater of it's dammed up, and it's where everybody goes to spend their summer in. It's 30 miles south of Casper, Wyoming. So that is one of my favorite spots. And then Island Park, Idaho is another great place because you can, from Island Park, you can get into Yellowstone, you can tour Yellowstone, and there are like 5 rivers that you can fish right in that general area, including the Henry's Fork, which is preeminent trout fishing for anyone who loves to fly fish. And then finally, Braunfels, Texas.
Interesting.
Mhm.
That's
So
fascinating.
I
Why
do have my
why New
3 favorite
Braunfels?
places because I go there every January, February to fish with a friend of mine on the Guadalupe River. It is the only river in Texas that has trout in it, and they stock it, but it's the
Wow.
only trout river in Texas.
That's
And I'm going there
fascinating.
again in February. Yes, yes. So I'll be there in February.
That's fantastic. So I can tell that you're in an office that doesn't look like your RV, so do you have an
It
off
is
season?
not. No, I do not, but I came to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. This is my office in my parents' house right now. This is you can see all of my World War II books in the background. You can see my some of my stamp collection stuff. And so this is my home office and I'm here through tomorrow, then I fly out to Vegas. The flight was a little easier from here than and my RV, Bertie Bee, is parked in Raymer, Alabama. I just drove my car home for the weekend. So Bertie Bee is plugged in, hooked up in Raymer, Alabama. And, the thing about RVs is I like to be able to monitor stuff remotely. I don't know if you monitor anything on your fifth wheel remotely or not, Jennifer, but
Absolutely.
I have yeah. So I have the micro air easy starts and the micro air thermostats. So it was 28 degrees in Alabama this weekend. So I was fiddling with the heat, making sure I didn't run out of propane in my external propane tank, all the things you got to do when you're not there. But I had unhooked the water. I had put all my water stuff in a bay so I didn't have to worry about frozen water pipes. But it's still a little stressful when you're not right there with your baby.
For sure. You know, I mean, and you've got quite the adventurous life. You're on the road, what, almost all year long doing different things. And I've seen you at RV shows and doing all sorts of things and at rallies promoting your book. But I mean, what do you do for fun
Yeah.
outside of that?
Okay, so my fun is fly fishing, going to rodeos. I enjoy interacting with everyone, and I interact with folks at a campground. I don't meet a stranger. I think you figured that out, Jennifer. I don't meet a stranger because as soon as I meet you, you're a friend at that point.
Well, and that's what's so neat about you. You make people feel so at ease with you. And I think that that's one of the things that drew me into you originally is how friendly and how open and how kind and considerate you were with everybody around you. You are like me where you want to make people feel included. And so, some of the stuff that you've done is so different than so many of us that it just speaks volumes to kind of your personality and your travel style.
Some friends of mine told me this week that they think I'm fearless. I said, I'm not fearless, but I'm not scared either. Okay. There's a difference between fearless and scared. Okay. Fearless means, it's kind of like somebody says, well, you shouldn't do that. And you just tell them, hold my beer. That's fearless. But I'm willing to step out on that limb only so far though, because somebody's probably taking the saw behind you and next thing you know you're crashing and burning. But I'm willing to step out on that ledge and I'm willing to try just about anything. But, you know, people have asked me, how do you get into this life? I said, you can think about it. You can stress over it. You can look at all this different stuff, but ultimately you have to go for it. You have to quote Michael Jordan, just do it. Because if you never do it, you'll never see how great this life is and this lifestyle is, because it truly is. It really is.
Well, and connection's so important to that. But as a solo, I mean, I imagine you have different types of connections than a lot of us do. How do you mitigate and navigate some of that for somebody that maybe is more solo, that's, going through something, maybe they want to hit the road by themselves and, live their best life doing it that way. What would you say to them?
So, okay, so for me, funny, I've got friends in probably 47 states, okay? And I've made a few of them. I've probably made a few of them mad. I've been through their towns, tried to meet for dinner, it didn't work out, and then my travel plan said, "Well, understood, got to keep going." Down the road I went. But my first RV rally was the FMCA rally. Now it's the FRVA rally in Tucson, Arizona in 2022. And I'm sitting in a campground right near where we're going to be for the week at Tucson. And I'm walking, I had a Class C at the time. I can't remember if it was Bessie or Bertha. I think it was Bertha. I think it was my bigger Class C. And I walked by this motorhome, and the guy is putting up the signs to go into the rally. And I looked at him and I said, "Wow. So that's how you put the signs up." And little did I know that Richard and Charlene Guidry were going to become two of my closest friends. We ended up being parked. I was behind them, or catty corner to them in Tucson for the week. We were there for RV basics training. So little did I know that Charlene and Richard were going to become two of my closest friends. I made new friends that week, I don't think you were in Tucson. If you were, I didn't meet you there, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. That was actually one of the first rallies that we did with RV Roofing Solutions back in FMCA, was in Tucson. We were in the back corner though. You had to know where to find us for that one. We were back by a bunch of the guys that had all the beds. So we've kind of moved up in the world from there.
Hey, you start, as I've learned about anything I've done, you start at the bottom and you work your way up the ladder.
Yep.
That's how it is with life. You just start at the bottom and you work your way up. But so from there, I fell in love with the RV rally idea in 22, and then in 23 I went to Perry and Gillette in my in I went to Perry in my old Class C and went to Gillette in Bertie Bee. I bought it between Perry and bought her March 31st, 2023. So I've had her now 2.5 years.
So she has an actual adoption date. I
She
love
has an
it.
actual adoption date. That's when I wrote the check.
That's
Yep, that's
awesome.
when I wrote the
Um,
check.
and Bertie B is a Tiffin, right? Is that what it is?
Yes.
See, I have
She
I
is
have an
a
absolute
Tiffin
love for
open
Tiffins.
road. I do too. You would actually love my episode from this past weekend, because I took a whole episode and talked about all of the cottage businesses around that have sprung up around Red Bay, Alabama.
Oh yeah.
And I covered all the ones that I have used. So I covered Ricky McGee's Pro Finishes, who took care of Bertie Bee's Boo Boos, Fowler Detailing and their ceramic coating, and, all of the different cottage industries that are there. If you own a Tiffin, Red Bay is where you go, quite
Yep.
frankly.
Well, and RV Roofing Solutions is a Tiffin benefit partner, and you don't get that just willy-nilly. You actually have to be selected to go to a Tiffin rally as a vendor. You have to be invited. And so it's kind of a process.
Okay.
So, we
Okay.
appreciate all of that, and we're family owned and operated. And I think that's why they liked us, is another type of, small business. And they love supporting small businesses that are family owned and operated. That's one of the things that makes Tiffin so special.
It definitely is. And that is, speaking of Tiffin rallies, that's where I got to know you, was at the
Yeah.
Riding the Range rally in Rock Springs, Wyoming.
Yep. That was our second or third one. That was our third Tiffin rally. So,
Mhm.
again, we got invited to Tucson last fall. Actually, it would have been 2 falls ago now. And you just don't say no to
Mhm.
Tiffin when they invite you. So That's how we got in,
No.
meeting all the people is just one of those things in this lifestyle that makes this so special for me. So, like, I love knowing when you're going to a rally and that we'll get to see you somewhere again because you're just such a pleasure to be around. And we appreciate all that you do in this community, from writing to just being a great advocate for, helping people connect. There's not a lot of people that are doing that, and so it's an important role and it's probably very
So,
underestimated in this.
Jennifer, thank you. Yes, thank you for that because my goal is to educate new RVers and seasoned RVers. And, what you're doing with the Learn to RV podcast kind it meshes with what I'm trying to do, Jennifer,
Yeah.
because y'all educate as well. And I was listening to the breaks episode with the guys, and I thought I was gonna wreck my RV laughing so hard in a couple of times when they said some of the things they said. Okay, so but what you're doing as well with Learn to RV is extremely necessary and extremely needed in this industry, quite frankly. Thank
Well, we
you
love it.
for
We
for
love it.
Learn to
It's a passion project and it's growing every day. And what's really neat is being able to sit around a campfire and have a conversation about all of this. And I think we're going to grow so much this winter. But one of the things we realized is it's been a slow climb. I mean, like, podcasts are hard. You've got one, and it's a great podcast that you're running. But
got one, yeah.
what we've real what we've realized is those slow, steady climbs are real followers. And so it's okay to do those slow, steady climbs. So
Right,
let's talk
and
about
that's
your
what
podcast a little bit, because it is a really cool podcast. You talk about
okay.
everything from fly fishing to, your books, to different things about your mishap with Bertie Bee, which is a story in of
Yep.
itself. But, the podcast itself, how did you get into podcasting? What led you down that path?
Well, I actually have to shout out to a friend of mine, Doug Simcox. Doug runs Beyond the Chutes podcast, and it talks he's rodeo history, but he was at the Kickback Ranch and Event Center annual cowboy reunion in February recording his podcast. And
Okay.
I recorded with him and I said, you know something? I could do this for the RV stuff. And so I bought the equipment, and it took me a few months to get over being microphone shy. You would never believe that I was microphone and video shy, but I was. So I recorded the first few episodes. I listen to them now and I cringe at how stodgy and and how uptight they sound because
Well, our guys, I'm glad you enjoyed that first episode with them, because they got some grief from some of the girls about, being uptight. And, they just recorded their second one this past week. And so that one's going to be coming out soon. And they took on quite a topic. So I'll have to, that one will be a good one. But, we do feature your podcast right on the Learn to RV page. So people can find your podcast really easily just by going to learntorv.com and going to the featured podcast section. And if there's other people out there that want to be a featured podcast on Learn to RV, the sky's the limit. We want to put it out there for everybody, what's out there. And so whether you're a fly fisherman or you're a rodeo guy
and
chasing,
I'm gonna
it's a great place to get listed.
right. And so I haven't listed y'all yet on my partner's page, but that is coming, Jennifer. I keep meaning to, and then lo and behold, I get distracted. I'm a squirrel.
Well,
I see a squirrel.
well,
Squirrel.
we'll appreciate it when the day happens. But until then, it's just one of those things that we want to do in this community, is make people get found. And it's not because we're big and famous. This is my passion project. So it's just my heart to connect people. I mean, like, we also know that there's great value in other podcasters and other community leaders that are out there like yourself.
Hey,
Well,
I
Stan,
listen to y'all and I learned something. I listen to y'all and I learn something every time I listen to you. I mean, I've been doing this 5 years, and I don't know it all. I don't think unless you've been RVing 30 years or whatever, you can ever know it all, and there's a lot to be said with bringing all of this information together. Your podcast, my podcast, and there are a whole bunch of other YouTube influencers out there. They're all putting out great information. But one of the things that you've said, and it has resonated with me, is I may not be your cup of tea, but there's somebody in this space that is. You've just got to find your cup of tea.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's one of those beautiful things about this lifestyle is, that you can ebb and flow with those people that do fill those cups. And, you can find those people out there. I'm just blessed to know you in real life and know that I'll get to see you again somewhere down the road. So that's a bonus for me. Well, Stan, thanks so much for
You'll
joining us this
definitely
week.
see me down the road.
I count on that. But thanks so much for joining us this week. We really appreciate you. We love that you wanted to be a part of our Community Spotlight series, and we look forward to seeing your adventures on Wandering Gypsy RV Life podcast and all your social media channels. And if they want to find you, where should they
Thank
connect?
you. They can connect with me at wanderinggypsyrvlife.com, and on my website, there are links to all 3 of my books. You can also find my books on Amazon. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and you might even see me at your local campground. Look for the Wandering Gypsy RV Life banner on the front of Bertie Bee, who is mad at me still today for putting that banner up.
That's awesome. You're going to need to order her a set of eyes, those ones that blink, that so she can actually watch you when you're not in your
Yes,
camper. Well,
I
thanks, Stan.
I
I
have thought
appreciate it.
about that. You're gonna have to send me a link. Thank you,
I'll
Jen.
have
Have
to
a
find
great
you one.
day. We'll see you down the road.
We'll catch you on the next stretch. Safe travels. Don't forget to hit that follow button so you never miss an adventure.